Hello there, Tracey Noriega here, paying it forward to you on this Thursday evening. Powered to the PEEPS. PEEPS stands for Positive, Extraordinary, Everyday People Stories. And I have the extraordinary Mari Verano. She is a licensed therapist. She's dedicated her career to working with people in the community of color, African American high school students in East Oakland, Latinx youth in the juvenile justice system. She's a therapist, she's a coach, she's a consultant. She specializes with issues related to the BIPOC, which is by Black, Indigenous people of color, and the LGBTQIA, LMNOP communities. And she also authored two ebooks, Exhausted to Empowered and Holidays and Toxic Families. Wow, what a resume there. But she is here to speak to us today about her upcoming webinar that she's throwing on this Sunday, the 21st, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and it's called The Sincere Method to Break Through Toxic Behavior. Welcome, Mari.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I am very curious what sincere stands for, because I was looking around to see if I could find it on your little Facebook and website. So would you enlighten us as to what the sincere method is all about?
Of course. Sincere stands for self-excavate, identify, and cope, eliminate, reward, and execute. And the sincere method is mainly to help people of marginalized identities identify, cope with, and eliminate toxic behavior from their workplaces and lives.
Okay, so is this for the employees who might find themselves in these situations? Like, who's this webinar, or who is it specifically aimed towards, this webinar?
Well, this webinar is aimed specifically, it's not necessarily employees or employers, because both employees and employers can benefit from this, because toxic behavior goes both ways. We can work under a toxic or difficult boss, or we can also have a toxic or difficult employee who is poisoning the environment. So my work is mainly for marginalized leaders with a social conscience who are tired of going to those leadership seminars where people say things like, oh, well, just care more, and then the bad behavior will go away, which really is not how it works. Or those leadership seminars where people will say things like, it's all about your mindset, without actually acknowledging that some people have a harder time succeeding because of structural racism, because of sexism, because of homophobia. And it's gaslighting to tell people of a marginalized identity that they have a bad mindset, because really it's toxic conditioning and a toxic macro environment that contributes to like why we aren't making the money that we want, or why we're not getting the promotion. And there's a lot of gaslighting going on out there in leadership communities, and frankly also from therapists. So I basically created this system to really cut through the crap.
Awesome. Well, so, the first question that goes through my head, because, I've worked in some toxic environments myself, and gone to, you go to HR and you go make your claim about having they call it kind of like the volatile work environment, but do you find, like, will you be able to go into corporations and bigger ones? I mean, does it have to be somebody from within that's going to come and get you? Or is it something that becomes systemic and then they look, all right, we need to address it? Or are you usually getting leaders who are being proactive? Hey, this is happening in my business, or I want to make sure it doesn't happen in my business. Like, what do you usually run into?
Well, a lot of the time, the coaching and consulting clients who come to me find themselves really emotionally destroyed by a situation when they've been accused of being the toxic one, or because somebody has poisoned the work environment or the family environment. And like, they come to me for clarity, for
Mm.
clarity around being able to analyze, okay, what truly happened in this situation. Because behavior, being able to analyze behavior is the key. Because in volatile work environments, people will always accuse each other of being this or that.
Mm.
But what I tell people who I work with is, let's look closely at the behavior in the situation. Let's put opinions aside and let's look at facts. And I want to name that, frankly, there are a lot of people being fed misinformation about how to cope with these situations. Like, I mean, I think about how the adage "kill them with kindness" is pretty is and sure, we can be kind in the situation like this, but we also, if we are dealing with a toxic employee and we're a manager, we also need to be firm. We also need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. We also need to say this was the impact on your behavior, and that can be done with kindness, but there's a lot of ignore it and it'll go away. And I recently attended this really awesome presentation. I saw somebody in the chat say, well, I don't want to focus on the negative. And I'm just like,
Mm.
well, in order to eliminate the negative, you do have to put some kind of focus on it and identify it
Yeah,
first.
can't not talk about it. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like the elephant in the room. It's like, what's that smell, right? Well, but um, but so that brings up to me, it's do you go into the workplace to actually see what's happening? Is that part of like what you do as a consultant? Because I'm thinking, it sounds like you're always going to be dealing with the he said, she said, and it's like there's something different about, well, I'm just going to insert myself and be the fly on the wall, and watch how things play out and see how people interact. Like, what do you do with that?
Well, as a consultant, what comes to my mind is I do a lot of autopsies, which sounds really morbid, but
Yeah, but
what I do as a consultant is when somebody brings a scenario to me, we really break it down to get to the heart of whose behavior is this? Who is actually like behaving in the ways that are poisoning this environment, and like really breaking down also, because every leader has what I call vulnerability factors around why we find ourselves talking to the same toxic people or hiring the same toxic people. And I make
yeah.
it very clear that vulnerability factor does not equal blame. A vulnerability factor could be, for example, somebody being raised in an environment where people put each other down all the time. So that's
Mm.
normalized. But if, for example, we hire somebody like that who is poisoning the environment, we're not necessarily to blame for it, but we were vulnerable to hiring that person because of something in our past.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I guess there is that, isn't there? So, in the sincere method, again, this is for leaders, in diverse communities. Um, what process? I know you don't want to give away everything about your webinar, but for those who may be interested and go, is this for me? I like what she's talking about. Like, the sincere sounds like it's a step process. Is that true? So if you want to walk us through that, just to give these leaders who may be watching this, an idea of what it is you're going to do in this webinar that they can, get benefit from for themselves.
Yes, everything that I do is stepwise because I recognize that being able to identify, cope with, and eliminate toxic behavior is a skill. It
Mm.
is a skill that I want to name is really scary for a lot of people to learn because it's boundary setting. And the
Mm.
first step is being able to identify those vulnerability points. Like maybe we grew up in a household where boundaries were seen as disrespectful.
Mm.
And so that is a possible vulnerability point if somebody down the line, whether it's a boss or a friend or an employee, continues to cross our boundaries. Somebody who grew up in a household with no boundaries is vulnerable to continue to allow these crossings to continue. So it all starts with self-work, self-excavation, really doing the uncomfortable work of, okay, what does make me vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to allowing this behavior to continue? It starts right there before we go into the techniques, because if we aren't aware of the potential pitfalls that we have that are in our background or in our lack of expertise,
Right.
we can't
It's
go forward and
awareness.
execute.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Awareness is number one.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not even aware you have a problem, then it's not a problem, right? So then that's the S, the self excavation. The I is
Yes.
then what part is that? What,
Identifying toxic
mhm.
behavior. And
Okay.
I put toxic behavior into two categories: technical and personal, where there might be things that personally don't vibe with us or rub us the wrong way, but aren't
Mhm.
signs that, for example, somebody is looking to take advantage of us or has a lack of empathy. Like,
Mhm.
there is toxic behavior that is universal to all situations. For example, the entitlement to our resources and our time, or
Uh,
repeated boundary crossings,
mm,
versus things that might be toxic in certain environments. Because it might not be a toxic thing, for example, for a friend to call you in the middle of the night saying, "Hey, I'm really upset, I need something."
sure.
But imagine if a boss did that in the middle of the night. That could be
Yeah.
potentially boundary crossing
That
and
reminds me of the
toxic.
movie, yeah, Office Space. Yeah, you can come in Saturday, right? Yeah. It's like, dude, I'm out. It's like you can't call me to
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
here. I'm
so
not here.
that's funny. That also reminds me of a boss I had. I remember I gave my 2 week notice and he told me I couldn't. And I said, excuse me. He actually told me you can't quit. I said, well, I'm actually giving my notice. I'm not just quitting. He's like, it was kind of strange. She's like, do you know how many people I had to interview for this position? And I just couldn't.
Ooh!
Yeah, 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 he did. And I just said, well, and he asked like why, and I was looking for my, how do I say it nicely, and basically it was, I found out from the accountant that he had no money, that all this stuff that I was doing, he had no money to pay for it. And there were, yeah, I mean, the accountant let me know. So I was just like, well, I think we just have a difference in work ethic.
Oh,
That was
wow!
my way.
What a graceful way to say you're fraud.
Yeah,
But that's
I think we have
strategy.
a difference in, yeah, in work ethics. So what are you trying to say? I'm like, I think I just said it. Like, and I'm giving my 2 weeks. It was the most awkward 2 weeks, so I have to admit. But yeah, that boundary setting is just that. Like in that position too, had no idea. Like I was asked to take his Mercedes to go get serviced. Like that was, hey, here's my keys. You go take it to get service and they'll drive you back. And I was sort of like, okay. It was, again, very small business. It was me, him, the accountant, and a couple other people, but that was it. And I was like, is this part of the job? Okay. All right. I mean, it was nice to drive the Mercedes, I have to admit, on the 101. So I took the long way. I'm like, oh, what did these buttons do? So yeah. So, boundary setting is one of those things. And I never thought of it as a perception, which is true because all of our behaviors and everything stem back to what we are just comfortable growing up in, and how we were, just kind of conditioned, if you would. So I
Yes.
want to finish up sincere because we are, I know the N is and or N.
Yes.
So then what is C? What happens in that step?
Well, once you identify that you're in a toxic situation, C means cope.
Hmm.
Because, like, in my case, I knew that I was working. I worked for more than one toxic employer, but part of the reason why I teach this method is because I've lived it.
Hmm.
And one of the last toxic employers I worked with, I could not leave right away. So I had to find a way to cope with the situation effectively, because I wanted to run, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
coping is where the strategy comes in.
Mhm.
The first
Mhm.
part of the strategy is coping. Like, coping is short-term strategy, eliminating is long-term strategy,
Mhm.
because you
Okay.
can't, first you need to cope, because it's
Yeah.
very rare. Like, for example, if somebody's living in a toxic roommate situation, often they can't get out right away,
Yeah.
because maybe they can't break their lease or they need to save up money to move. So coping is an important step before you go to the next C, which is eliminate.
Okay. Eliminate. And is that really, can you eliminate their behavior, or is it eliminating like your reaction to the behavior? What are we eliminating exactly?
Well, we can never have control over how another person
Mm.
acts. But what I mean by eliminate is getting it out of our spaces, like
Oh.
getting the termites out of the house. So they go.
Fumigate. Okay.
Yeah, yes, it's here. But yeah, eliminating means getting it far away. And I want to name that this is a dynamic process. That even
Mm.
if we say, hey, this person is going to be fired because of what they're doing in the workplace, or this person is no longer allowed in my spaces, the process of elimination is dynamic, because toxic people like death and taxes. You most likely
Mm.
will encounter them
Mm.
in any place that you go. And yeah, sometimes it's better to cope, and sometimes it's better to get out.
Eliminate it. Yeah. So then R goes to what? What are we doing now? Now we've eliminated it. Now R leads us to.
R means reward. And
Hmm.
rewarding is coming up with, let's say, rewarding is about creating an environment where toxic behavior does not grow. And everything
Mhm.
that I teach in the R is based on behavioral science that I've used to help people leave toxic work environments, help people get sober, and
Mhm.
rewarding. I'm going to name that rewarding our employees, rewarding our children for
Yeah.
doing their chores, or rewarding our employees to doing what's right. It does not have to be something sleazy and manipulative. It can absolutely be something that's done in integrity. This is not about
Yeah.
bribery. It's about creating a healthy environment through positive reinforcements.
Yeah, well, and one of those, I've learned when we've gone to our group therapies and behavior coaching for our kiddo is, reward is also praise. Just, just the acknowledgement, of a good job done, and the feeling that you have around them. Hey, you had a really great day. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Or, you helped out. I really loved how you helped so and so. You did this. You pulled in a little bit. I saw that you offered some help. So praise goes a long way as reward. And I would say too, I've been learning that we don't do enough self-praise to ourselves. And I don't know if you teach that in your stuff, but we need to definitely reward ourselves, especially for not losing it.
Oh, oh, big time. Like,
Yeah.
self-compassion and self-validation is a
Oh,
huge part of what I teach. I was just telling
cool.
somebody today that there's this expectation that once we start adulting or become an adult, there's no need for rewards anymore. And that could be so much further from the truth, because if we learn how to
True.
reward ourselves and nurture ourselves, then we're not relying so much on that external validation, hoping
Yeah.
that maybe our boss will see what we did, or maybe that person will stop putting me down. Like,
Mhm.
self reward, and self care are very powerful
Yeah.
tools for leaving a toxic situation, because self reward and self care say, I deserve better than this.
Oh, definitely. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Thank you for, giving people permission to say that and to put themselves first. And it's not selfish. It's not selfish.
No.
So E, we get to E, and that E, after you've rewarded yourself, then what is that E?
Executing means
Ah.
putting everything that's learned together. And what I do in the execution stage in this group program is, we do some really deep audits and putting these things
Mm.
together and seeing, okay, what are there vulnerability factors not only in us, but let's look at the whole organization's
Mhm.
vulnerability factors. A vulnerability factor might be that your organization was sued before, and you're afraid
Mm-hmm.
of coming across as racist or sexist or homophobic, and that's keeping you from
Doing the right thing.
terminating
Mm-hmm.
somebody. Yes. So like really looking to see, okay, where what resources do we have to carry out the sincere plan? Because it could be that in this final stage, somebody might need to read a little bit more on the dynamics of toxic behavior. Maybe they know all of that, and what they need to build is their self-compassion or
Mm.
self-reward systems, which I teach my coaching clients self-reward systems to cope with toxic situations. And sometimes it really is a matter of just practicing those things and internalizing them.
Oh, practice. Yeah, it's definitely practice. And all your steps that you talked about, I mean, they do all sound very dynamic, and they're things that you have to continually do. So I want to bring up, because I have a personal interest in this, because I saw on your website that you're the author of 2 books, From Exhausted to Empowered, and then the one that really caught my attention was your Holidays and Toxic Families, because I'm actually doing a webinar on next Tuesday using my ARC method, which is awareness, responsibility, choice, with a lot of conscious breath to help you like not react, right? Instead respond. And I was like, I wonder what kind of things she has that she talks about, since you have so much experience with toxic environments and such. And as you were just pointing out, then I started putting little things together, that in our work environments, yeah, we just carry over what we learned, right? I mean, what we learned at home
Oh,
and in school comes with us, because that was just our normal, that was normalized for us. So I've spoken about that, you know holidays, yeah, everyone wants to be all cheery, happy. I even named it happy joy, but it's like, it's not. I mean, I remember being very anxious about some holidays, and was happy when I lived far away enough that I couldn't come back home for them.
yeah.
And it's like addressing these things, because people have to, I mean, let's speak bluntly about it. A lot of people have grown up in toxic environments, and it's not like maybe
Yes.
the whole family. It can just be one, and it's that one person who can, just as we know, just kind of infect the whole area, and everyone's walking on eggshells, or they're acting in different ways and such. So I'd really love to know from you, like, what you address in your holidays for toxic families. And I would assume this is for everyone. This isn't going to just be for leaders. This is anyone with a family with a toxic member in it.
Yes, the book is Holidays and Toxic Family, and it is a workbook that
Oh,
is full of strategies,
mm,
practical information, practical exercises that people can use to, for example, navigate a situation where there might be a toxic family member, or even if somebody decides to opt out of a family gathering
mm,
completely, there are exercises in there about how to really create your own traditions, because part
mm,
of taking back the narrative of the holidays is saying, look, I'm an adult now. Even though we did this when I was a
mhm,
child and it didn't work for me, I no longer have to do that. And I've guided coaching clients through creating new traditions with their families that have
yeah,
been incredibly empowering. And there is a little bit of a warmth to it, because you absolutely can find a way to take joy back on
mm,
your own terms. Like you don't have to follow your family's narrative. You can break with tradition. And to be bluntly loving and honest, we don't have to be around anybody who we are not legally required to take care of, especially during a time of the year when most people have time off. Like, why? Of course I know why,
mm,
but I'm going to ask lovingly, why do you or anybody listening, why do you continue to put yourself in a situation where you are around people that you are not legally required to take care of or be around, and they are driving you crazy. Of course, the answer is conditioning.
Hmm.
But again, that's the identification
Well,
of the behavior first.
well, there's also, the feeling of I'm obligated. It's a duty. Like then it'll become something else that's going to get talked about by the other family members. I'll never hear the end of it. Some people will get calls from some family members. I mean, the things that, are pervasive in families, as we know too, and it could be just, as you said, it could be that one person, but you want to go see everybody else. So like,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm doing like with the arc is like, hey, kind of getting your mind wrapped around that person is that way. And as you said too, we can't change anybody else's behavior. All we can do is really look at ours and look at how we're going to instead respond versus react, and making it okay that that's that person. And you know what, I can be kind without actually having to give them so much of my energy, but I don't have to be rude either, And like you said, what I really love is just being, just bluntly honest that, I'm here for all of you, and I don't need to exclude them, but I also don't need to give them that, power over me having a good time. So I'm kind of curious, like what kind of exercises you have for people who are going to go to it, because there are the ones who are just going to be flat out, you know what, I choose out of this holiday. But then there's the ones that are, it's only a couple people or this or that, and I do want to have my family, gathering. And what do you suggest for them? Like, what are some of the things that you help? And does it go back to sincere? Do you use that in there? Is it?
Well, for anybody who is going to a gathering and they know there is a problematic family member there, yes, C equals cope.
Cope.
If
Yeah.
you don't want to eliminate, as if you don't want to avoid, you have to find a way to cope.
Mm.
And one of the methods that I teach people who are coping with a toxic family member, but they still want to see everybody else is, and this is a bonus technique because I don't think this is mentioned in the book, it's called bookending,
Bookending. Yeah.
where if you know you're going to see this problematic, toxic person, then you need to find a way to, in a way, to really engage in your coping skills before you go. For
Yeah.
example, this might be a really good time to talk to your therapist or take a warm bath or whatever floats your boat to fill your body with those positive
Mm-hmm.
pleasure chemicals. So when you go into that situation, it's going to feel a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And after you get out of that situation, if this person, said something to you, that might be when you have plans to call a friend or call your therapist again, or have another reason why you're there. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if you're going a long distance to see a family member that is problematic, like build in some kind of self-reward
Mm-hmm.
where you're taking in, again, socially distanced and COVID responsible way, a local landmark, or maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
this local specialty food or something that you want to try, and you want to make sure that you're going to get one of those before you get into the car, you hop
Yeah.
on the plane again. So that's
Speaking my
bookending.
language. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's nice. Well, and I always use too is there's going to be the members there that you want to see and that you can go to. And I know we would have a lot of times like a look or a word we'd say that it was like, okay, time to like step outside or to do something if you get that buddy system going on as well. But I definitely agree with you. It's prepping yourself beforehand and even during. That's why I don't know if do you have breathing techniques in yours? Because I'm always talking about the deep breaths when you're getting triggered, when you're getting, they said something and you know, because we don't get taught coping skills, Mari. I mean, I think you see that. That's one of my biggest things and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I see you're doing the same is like teaching people, but if we could teach them earlier, if we could get to the kiddos and to the parents and help them with some positive coping skills, because we all know what the other ones are, and they're not that great. So it's really getting into these positives. So do you use breathing at all? Do you advocate for that?
Well, one thing that I do teach people is something that I call five senses grounding,
Hmm.
where it's the use of the memory. Like, I have one client that I work with who is heading into a toxic situation for the holidays, and she has pieces, mementos from a relative who has passed, who was very supportive of her. And I said,
Yeah.
look, strategy. Like, when you
Yeah.
find yourself at that toxic relative's house, bring a piece of the person,
Yeah.
your late loved one, with you. You bring their cameo, or like I have things from my
Yeah.
grandmother that are pieces of jewelry. That would be an example from my life. So I teach more grounding through the
Mhm.
five senses and through memory, but I also have a lot of cognitive behavioral tools as well. And one of them that I teach is the bingo game, which
Hmm.
is, you literally, if you know you're going to be, especially an extended situation with a problematic, abusive, toxic family member, to literally play bingo. For example, one of the things you might put on the bingo board is like talks, like says something racist, uses a racist term.
Mhm.
And then instead of becoming upset, if you have this
Right.
bingo board framework, again, five across, five down, or five diagonal means a
Okay.
bingo. So somebody who's prepared with a bingo game now comes into that situation with a racist or sexist or homophobic relative and waits for them and says, huh. So if Uncle Bob says five sexist things and they're all in a
Right.
row, that means I guess spa day. Or if he says a lot of things that are really
Yeah.
terrible, if he objectifies women again, and what I tell people is prepare for both the bingo and if you have the
Across, yeah.
blackout the
Yeah.
board.
Oh my god, yeah, the blackout. Well, and that's,
Yeah.
that's, I think that's where, comes in having those, handy, you know, family buddy system that you can, nicely leave the room, like, and go to another space or have that, "Hey, have you seen my new car?" You or yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that, because I've talked about that too. Sometimes you've got to make it fun. You've got to bring it, and because the fact is you already know it. You know, you already know this. So why get yourself more worked up about it? You know it's going to happen. You know that that's how they are. So it's just like, you know what? Then I can decide now. I can make that new choice. That's my C is choice. I can make a different choice that I'm not going to allow it to get me all upset. I'm just going to laugh and go, ah, there he is, Uncle Bob, and I'm sure there's nice Uncle Bobs out there,
Oh,
but
yeah. Yeah. No offense to anybody named Bob.
yeah, let's not dismay his name there. But it's like, yeah, it's like looking at it that way and just like breathing into it and just smiling about it. And you don't have to get charged about it. And that's where that breathing comes in, that you can just smile and breathe. Because I mean, too, you smile, just by smiling, it sets off all of those endorphins and you are already elated. You don't have to wait to be happy to look happy. And a lot of those relatives, you do need to just smile and breathe at. There's really nothing to say except for, I like this one too. Well, that is an interesting perspective. I've never thought of it that way. Thank you. I'm going to go get something to eat.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Time for me to
exactly.
go.
Exit stage left. So awesome. Well, we are, yeah, I mean, it's been awesome speaking with you. I want to remind everyone, if you just came in or maybe you came into the middle of this video, Mari is having a webinar on this Sunday. All the information is below and it's scrolling across there. I'll drop it in the comments. You need to just email her and put access in there. She'll send you the link to her webinar on Sunday. And this is for leaders to teach the sincere method. And if you didn't, you'll just rewind and you'll find out what sincere is about. And also on her website, which I need to put that on there too. I'll put that in the comments with the link there. Is on her website, she has that book, the holidays and toxic family, of what we're talking about, because 'tis the season. And I think you have it on sale right now as a Black Friday thing. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, I realize I, imperfect action. It's Saturday, November 21st, not Sunday,
Oh,
November 21st. It's okay.
I have to do.
I totally forgot
Wait, today's
about that.
Thursday. Yeah, tomorrow's 25th. Yeah, you know what? And
Yeah.
between the Saturday. Yeah, between our
Yes. Yes.
changing
No
of the
worries.
clocks. Yeah, but thank you for that. We will say that, and I will make sure that's on there too. It is
Yeah.
Saturday, people. It is the 21st, and that is a Saturday. So there's
Yes.
that. And then again, your books are on sale. And here we are into the holidays. So anyone who may feel they would like some of these exercises and do that, you have a Black Friday special. Anything you want to say about that?
Yes, if you buy Holidays and Toxic Family on my website between now and the end of the day on November 30th, you get a 30-minute strategy slash consultation session with me. So if you know that you are heading into a toxic family gathering, if you know that you need to see this person even though you're dreading it, this is where you get on the phone and strategize with me for 30
Ah.
minutes, absolutely free. And see me as your holiday wing woman if you need to get out of that situation. We can
That that
come up with
is
some.
that is an awesome, yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, give me a coping skill. This is what they do. This is how they trigger me. Help me out. What can I do?
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yes.
and 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 you know what? And come to the webinar too. I'm having on Tuesday. I'll talk about some other things about breathing and just like looking at things. I love that you do that, that you have to make it kind of fun. You have to shift your own perspective, because that is the only thing that you can control, as you've said. And if we all want to still continue to be control freaks, then let's control the one thing we have control over, which is actually ourselves, which most people don't anyway. So let's let's concentrate on controlling our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions. I mean, that's where we can put the most emphasis and be effective for ourselves too, and for everybody else. So I love what you do. Thank you, Mari, for speaking into that. And hey, if you have this video and you know of some leaders, or you have a toxic environment and you just want to, I don't know, drop it to your boss or HR or something, you could just hey, sharing this. That may be a good way too. But yeah, we'll have all of the contact information. Thank you so much, Mari. Is there anything you want to close out and letting anybody know anything before we end here?
Yes, yes. Remember that learning how to identify, cope with, and eliminate toxic behavior from your spaces is a skill that you can
Hmm.
learn. You do not have a bad mindset. You did not deserve this. You did not manifest it because the universe wanted you to suffer. You can learn these skills, and you can learn these skills with expert guidance and work with me if you want to go from exhausted to empowered and be able to analyze any kind of situation that you're in and make the most out of it.
Well, there you go. I couldn't have said it better, and that's why I had you say it. Awesome, Mari. Well, thank you, everyone, and all the links are there, and you can see her on her Facebook page and her website, Mari Verano. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and love what you do out there, cleaning up the environment in a whole nother way. All right, everyone. So stay happy, healthy, positive, and enjoy the rest of your never before lived day. Cheers.